This subject matter, I think it's good for you to know, is near and dear to me because I've seen the success. It's one thing to have an idea, and it's another thing to have the opportunity to put the idea in action for several decades. In order to approach this subject, I need to provide some context. Now, this strategy goes hand in hand with the loft or lounge strategy. Please keep that in mind. You might be curious, well, what kind of clientele do I deal with? As I hinted this morning, I'm in a unique position to deal with a cross-section of the millennial population from all over the world. So this strategy of Contemporary Vedic Ashram deals with persons of all nationalities. Of course, they're Americans, they're New Zealanders, they're Australians, they're French, they're German, they're Chinese, and they're Indians also. How to first generate a flow. Without the flow, where are you going to get your candidates to start thinking? How are we going to develop and train them? This is why I said at first that actually the Contemporary Vedic Ashram strategy goes hand in hand with the loft or lounge strategy. Briefly, I'll discuss the lounge or loft strategy. That subject will be explained more in the next session. I explained this morning about Srila Prabhupada's pre-Second Avenue days, in which he held gatherings in artist lofts on the Bowery, and in what seemed to be a more informal way, presented the subject of bhakti to interested persons. I explained this morning how Prabhupada would sometimes cloak his talks in fascinating items about India, while always speaking the parampara, quoting Shastra, and always presenting the bhakti conclusions. We don't have those lectures recorded because obviously no one was recording back then, but Mukunda Maharaj personally told me. How to create a flow of persons who then you can start to consider their elevation in bhakti. Basically, Prabhupada was running a loft or lounge program before Second Avenue, and at Second Avenue, at that first center, he was running a Contemporary Vedic Ashram. These various kinds of persons from different walks of life, Prabhupada had gathered them in that storefront and was training and developing them in an informal way, and then gradually the tutelage became more and more formal. Yes. How many of you may have heard the talk I gave at the ILS? Not okay. Then I can repeat a little. Yes, Maharaj? I can repeat a little that I. Okay. Okay. He knows how to get me going. What happens when a typical person comes to your temple or your center? How do they see it? Make an experiment. Blank your mind of any knowledge of Krishna consciousness and his lifestyle and devotees, and then approach your facility, your temple, your center, and see what kind of reception that you get and how that reception would fit the mentality of someone who is not from a fortunate Indian background, who knows nothing about Krishna, but just a little bit curious, and they work up enough courage sometimes to come to your place. Where will they sit? What will they eat? Who will they talk to? It's these fundamentals which actually make or break us. Do we have a facility that can actually handle newcomers so that they can calmly and gradually approach the bhakti knowledge and process? In my talk in Mayapur, I brought up the point of how in 1976, Srila Prabhupada had his secretary send a letter to all the temples saying, now we have enough temples. It was 1976. What we need are combination, what he called restaurants and reading rooms. I've taken that as cafes, more intimate sounding, cafes and seminar workshop areas. Srila Prabhupada was considering, how can the Western audience more comfortably hear the message of Lord Krishna? He was tuned into these things. I also pointed out in the ILS seminar in Mayapur, Prabhupada's having his secretary send a letter to all temples expressing his concern about the quality of prasad at the Sunday feasts. And then he gave a long list of preparations that must be there for every Sunday feast. The list was 13 preparations. If you heard the list, you would think this was like the best Gaur Purnima or Janmashtami feast that ever was. But that's what Prabhupada asked for every Sunday. So my point is that His Divine Grace was concerned. What is the impression that people get when they come to a temple? Another famous letter. Always have, as Gopabhata Prabhu was saying this morning, always have prasad on hand for whoever visits the temple. They should never leave without some prasad. And he gave practical instructions. The cook prepares a batch, puris, this, that, sabji, and if guests come and take it all, the cook prepares another batch. If no guests come and the preparations are left over at the end of the day, the devotees polish it off. So these are three separate occasions where Prabhupada expressed his concern about hospitality. Another famous example, the Los Angeles temple, when construction and renovation was being done to make the current temple room, Srila Prabhupada asked for the chairs to be left in. Somehow or other, the devotees didn't get it. They didn't get his point. And they removed all the chairs because that place, that part of the building was the sanctuary or the worship area of a former Christian church. And it had church chairs in it. Prabhupada asked, leave them there. His vision was that there would be lectures on bhakti and people would come and sit in chairs and listen. But what did his disciples think? We're Hare Krishnas, all the actions on the floor. Hare Krishnas eternally eat on the floor, sleep on the floor. They do everything on the floor. That became the standard of and measure of bhakti, how much you did on the floor. So the devotees, the leadership, took all the chairs out. And Srila Prabhupada was very angry. I heard this from an eyewitness. The temple leader at the time, or one of the main leaders, particular devotee is no longer with us. Prabhupada called him into his room and heavily chastised him. And the devotee tried to back out of the room on his knees. And Prabhupada, come back here. The devotee had to reverse and crawl back into the room while Prabhupada was chastising him. Why do you take the chairs out? We've been very successful with persons from a fortunate background that understand something about the importance of the Vedas, the importance of Krishna. Those from a fortunate Indian background, which I explained in Mayapur at the ILS. This is the juicy, low-hanging fruit. And yes, that fruit is sweet. But it's now time, and that's why you've gathered here this weekend, to go to branches of the tree that seem less accessible. I told a story in Mayapur about a personal experience for my own family. Those of you who have heard it, don't mind my repeating it again, please. This story is pivotal for me because it got me thinking. When something happens to someone near and dear to you, you really then start to think. So I have a youngest brother. He's 11 years younger than me. And unlike me, he didn't grow up in New York. He grew up in Detroit. And he went to Kalamazoo College, top-level liberal arts small school. He was on the university debate team, and he entered a nationwide competition for solo debate. He came out #1 in the USA. Harvard Law School called him up and said, "We want you. How much money do you need to attend? Money is no object. You're coming to Harvard Law." So he attended Harvard Law, and he didn't tell me this, by the way, until 5 years later. It's the older brother, younger brother thing. While at Harvard Law, he was studying ISKCON court cases. He was studying the airport cases, the so-called brainwashing cases, anything to do with ISKCON. He never told me this, but he said later, 5 years later, his goal was to become ISKCON's lawyer. He didn't know much about the theology. He read a bit of some Krishna books that I had left around the house, but he thought, this is a cutting-edge organization that will have trend-setting legal cases. And this would be an exciting legal career. My brother's doing this, but he was a Christian, but he thought this would be a great way to have a career. So one day, he goes over to the Boston Temple. He knocks on the door. What we found out later was the vice president of the temple. Opens the door. Yes? And my brother, he's looking very clean cut. He wasn't wearing a hoodie. And Respectable guy. He says, "Excuse me, my name is such and such." He doesn't tell them he's my brother. And he says, "I'm a Harvard Law School student. I've been specializing in ISKCON court cases." And this is right in the middle of, what's that court case that Boston went through? Yes. Yes, that one. I've been studying at Harvard all about ISKCON and its legal cases. I'd like to know if you could use any legal help. Nope. We have our own lawyer, thank you. Didn't even invite him in. His heart was so cracked that was it. He never went back again and didn't tell me for 5 years. Now you might say, well, he's puffed up. He's my brother, it's probably true, but in any case, the story shows an extraordinary loss for us. Last I told this story in Mayapur, my youngest brother was General Counsel for Toyota North America and Chief Compliance Officer for Toyota North America. I guess you'd say the Caladri of Toyota for North America. Now, just as of last month, he's the worldwide General Counsel for Toyota. He's the Global Compliance Officer for Toyota, and he's in charge of the executive hiring for any non-Japanese executive for Toyota in the world. And this is what came knocking on our door, asking for devotional service. So that got me thinking, what kind of guest reception are we supplying? And how we can, without changing our stripes, how can we make bhakti accessible for those who are not from a fortunate Indian background, who don't have the culture, thank you, don't have the inclination, yet are curious or sometimes desperate. So I began 20 years ago with what is now known as the loft or lounge concept. How to create kind of a Krishna conscious nightclub. Because young people, especially millennials, they got to go somewhere and hang out. They have to eat somewhere and they want to go places. So why not create a Krishna conscious venue where they'll get tasty prasad, comfortable place to sit and talk about interesting things, and they'll meet interesting staff members who can relate to them. So over the past 20 years, I've been operating from facilities that I thought were just normal size. And when Kalakanta Prabhu came, he said, "I never expected these places to be so big." There's room for maybe 40 people to engage in a discussion, seated on couches and chairs. There's a cafe area that can probably seat 30 persons. There's a room that can hold 40 persons doing yoga. The whole idea is to create a venue where persons will feel no hesitation to come. And not only come once, but to my realization, in this present stage of the age of Kali, the atmosphere is so disturbed, there's so much agitation and distraction. For a Western young person to come once a week is not enough. Remember back in the good old days of the 70s, some of you remember. Someone would show up at the door, go to a Sunday feast, wow, this is it. And then immediately think to move in. That kind of concentration, I find for various reasons it's missing today. I've heard so many stories about persons who became Hare Krishna devotees in the 70s after getting a Bhagavad Gita and reading it straight through and in 3 days and then just marching right to the nearest center. That kind of focus, for some reason, that's another discussion, doesn't seem to be existing today. So I thought that a good rule of the thumb is how to offer a place that a young Western person can drop by at least 3 times a week. Not simply Sunday, but also a few times during the week. And then I see young people from all over the world, they start making some solid progress. Then you can make an impact, I've seen, on their distracted minds. So what would bring a millennial Westerner day after day, or shall we say evening after evening? Our program started at 6 o'clock. What would bring them? They have to eat somewhere. They don't cook. So therefore, if they're not vegetarians, the choice is McDonald's, Burger King, or something like that, KFC. Or if they don't do that, they simply go to a supermarket, get some pasta and some canned tomatoes and throw it together. They don't know how to cook. So where are they going to eat? So I thought, if we can offer them quality prasad for the same amount of money that they would spend at McDonald's, we've got them. Why can't they come to our place several times a week and spend what they would spend at McDonald's and instead get sumptuous prasad, global cuisine? Besides prasad, we have on offer discussions on various topics, certainly including Bhagavad Gita. For Sundays, we fly the Krishna flag. Nothing held back. We advertise it as the Soul Fest or the Krishna Fest. Everyone knows what's going to go on that day. But the rest of the week, it can be more indirect. I've thought the best way to resolve the indirect, direct preaching controversy is to do both. Otherwise, I've seen devotees pull their hairs about this for ages. What about indirect preaching, Prabhu? What about direct? That was too direct. Oh, that was too indirect. It just goes on and on and on. So why not do both? But I devised a formula. If you want to come on the nights and just do yoga, or if you just want to come on the nights and hear Ayurveda or this or that, you pay for the privilege of not hearing about Krishna. And what you pay supports the nights when people come who do want to hear about Krishna. So that way we felt kind of empowered, and we felt wholesome, and we had our integrity intact. The Sunday program, the Soul Fest, the Krishna Fest, that charges money, but it's probably a third of the price of what people would pay coming on the weekdays when they pay for yoga and a meal as a package, or a workshop on this or that as a package. So what I noticed after a time was people, young persons from all over the world were attending. USA, Canada, Europe, China, especially in New Zealand. It's a huge Chinese population, huge Chinese tourist destination. And also young Indians who were rebelling against their tradition, rebelling against their parents. The parents were in India, so they couldn't see their children rebelling. and they were showing up. Like, wow, this is cool. If this is what Bhagavad Gita is, I'm for it. Once you get a flow going, and it's the job of the staff to keep that flow going. The staff's attitude is, this is your place. This is not the Hare Krishna place. This is not anyone's place. It's the people who come. It's your place. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to feel like you can recommend to your friends, come with me to my club. I'm going to take you to my place. When I overhear a person saying like that, I know that there's success. Just like an American would say to one of his friends. I've heard my youngest brother say to my middle brother, when you go to Vegas, I'll take you to my restaurant. So similarly, I've heard persons say like that. So I brought you here, how do you like it? This is my place. I've overheard them saying things like, I hope not too many people find out about this. This is really great. So then you know you have built up a club clientele. They start coming regularly. On the weekdays, we don't wear devotional attire. That's just the way we play the game, so to speak. On Sundays, it's full on Hare Krishna. What happens is that people who come on the weekdays, some of them wonder, what's this Soul Fest, this Krishna Fest? And they come on a Sunday. Some persons take a while they can even come for years before they start considering, what goes on Sunday? That's all right. Our staff members, I never thought this would happen. A company culture developed in which those who came in the beginning, in the 90s, when our operations first started, they became the staff, and they're perpetuating the culture and passing it down to the newcomers. I never expected that to happen. Our first batch of staff members, the lady was 21, her boyfriend was maybe 30. They approached our Bhakti Lounge, and right when she got near the front door, she said, wait a minute, is this a Hare Krishna place? Let's go the opposite direction. Somehow they worked up enough courage, and they entered in. So I've seen many persons like that. Some never thought they would attend anything related to Krishna. Others were directly looking for Krishna. That's okay. We're open to all types. The most important part is the staff. Can the staff interact with persons to keep them coming day by day without immediately going for the knockout punch? How to keep them coming day after day and building relationships with devotees. Once you see that they're starting to relax with devotees, look out. And that's the most beautiful sight to see. When they're sitting on couches and talking to a devotee like they're talking to their best friend, you know then that they're entering into the bhakti atmosphere. They know how to relax with a devotee. And of course, for them to relax with a devotee knows how to relax with them. And that's not always so easy. It takes some actual empowerment that comes from attentive chanting, firm dedication to Prabhupada's books. I must add that our centers, our Bhakti Lounges, are firmly dedicated to distributing Prabhupada's books. We don't try to sell a single copy here, a single copy there. The goal of the staff is sets. In other words, build up a relationship and then introduce the person to the full set. Rather than, you might say, nickel and dime them over a little pamphlet here or a little book there. Why not introduce them to the full scope of the club? And part of the club means that you get a set of books and you read them. This is part of joining the club. Part of joining the club is you do japa meditation. Sometimes it's said that Prabhupada's books are difficult and not everyone can access them. Sometimes it's even said that Prabhupada's books, maybe they've lost not that they've lost anything, but just it's difficult presenting them in this day and age. So I thought, maybe this is an opportunity for more service from us. I thought this based on Prabhupada's original idea of restaurant and reading room. His notion was that After eating, people would walk into the reading room and pick up one of his books, sit down comfortably, and start reading them. So I thought, why can't a prime purpose of these lounges be that we have workshops and discussions and camaraderie, all for helping people to read Prabhupada's books? Rather than just, there are parts of them that are tough, or, how will they understand? Why not help them turn the pages? In other words, if there is some difficulty, why not see it as an opportunity for more service rather than just drop the whole thing? So yes, basically, and I'm for years I've been doing it. At first I was shocked. Don't people know how to read a book anymore? But no, we have to. Even I myself, the Swami, I sit down with them. They hold a Bhagavad Gita in their hands. Well, how do you read this? You start with page 1. And you turn the pages. And you don't stop until you get to the end. And you just don't read the bold type. You read everything on the page. Oh, really? I have to do that even with university students. So I explain to them, there are going to be things in this book that are going to be quite different. They're going to be things that are quite familiar. Just stick with it until you get to the end. And when you get to the end, you'll find it all unfolds like a symphony. And so I see that in that lounge atmosphere, with devotee association, people, they take to Prabhupada's books, they overcome any barriers that they may have thought they encountered, because there's a whole culture that is encouraging them and nourishing them all in relation to the books. There's prasad, there's music, there's camaraderie, and there's books. For me, of course, and that's just me, down the road I'm thinking, if I get them attached to Prabhupada's books in the beginning, guess what? Soon as they become established in bhakti, what are they going to want to do? That's right. So, it's a long-range program. How to get them to love and relish Prabhupada's books. That's one of the core purposes of the lounge. All right. Now, people are coming. That's a great accomplishment. This is why I'm starting by explaining the lounge or the loft. People are coming. You've got to flow. In Auckland, New Zealand, a city of 1.2 million, we could be getting on a Sunday 150 persons who are not devotees. On a weekday, you get maybe 50 persons who are coming and paying the equivalent in US, probably $15 a night. Happily paying because the prasad is devastating. It's not simply Indian food. It is global cuisine, sometimes Indian, sometimes Mexican, Italian, this, that, Caribbean, whatever. Once they start coming regularly and relaxing with devotees, they get to know the staff. It's natural then that they want to be a part of this because it's so cool. I've had arguments, not really arguments, but disagreements with sometimes the people who come. I remember one of the customers asked me, what is this? Is this Hare Krishna? And I said, yes. I don't believe it. This is not Hare Krishna. And he proceeded to argue with me for 10 minutes. This is not Hare Krishna. He says, why? I asked, why? Because they treat you so nicely here. We don't hide that we are devotees. As I said, we have our Krishna Fest on Sunday. We have everything is geared towards getting to know Prabhupada's books. The devotees are the staff are firmly established as devotees in terms of understanding their Shakti, their potency comes from chanting Hare Krishna with attention, reading Prabhupada's books. All right, you've got a clientele. You've got a steady flow. Where I happen to spend 4 or 5 months of the year down under, there's persons from all over the world coming. It's a very interesting opportunity for experimentation. What do you do when someone is really into it? And they become more than just a friend of the club. They want to become a member. What do you do with them? When you're dealing with Westerners, meaning when you're dealing with non-Indians who don't have the great fortune of having stable family background, who don't have the fortune of having some kind of culture that's in relationship to Vaishnava culture, to Vedic culture, how do they become trained and developed in bhakti? If they go to so many of our temples, is there anyone there to train them? I mean, Chicago Temple is a wonderful enterprise, but is every temple like that? Think of the temples where you're from, and someone from a non-Indian background wants to develop in bhakti. First of all, who's going to teach them? Who is going to give them life counseling, which is so important? In San Diego, of course, is Mahatattva Prabhu is there. Badri Narayan Maharaj is there. Dravida is there. Most temples don't have that. And besides, the temple president is so honestly busy in Krishna's service. It's not like the old days of ISKCON in the 70s where there was a temple president, so many other devotees who were ready to put energy into training manpower, woman power. It's not there anymore. In that sense, our juicy, sweet Indian congregation has spoiled us. Why? Because pretty much, although things are changing, they have stability, culture, they have a tradition that allows them to proceed smoothly in bhakti. But the Westerners don't have it. And this is what is so shocking when those from a fortunate Indian background try to do outreach to Westerners. The first thing you notice is you don't have a leg to stand on in terms of finding any stability in their life. Or more accurately, they don't have a leg to stand on. The family structure, the ingredients of civilization that provides a foundation for bhakti development is generally not there. So what to do? I remember, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her name, Mangalarti Devi from Toronto. She first came to bhakti through a bhakti lounge in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. And for the past 6 or 7 years, she's been trying to do that in Toronto. And I remember the phone calls I used to get from her when she first started. Gurudev, I don't understand. I talked to this girl 2 weeks ago about her problems with her boyfriend, and I thought I sorted it out. Then the next week, she called me up and said, the problems were still going on, but it was with a different boy. Gurudev, I don't understand. And then the next week, she called me up and said she had a problem with a girl who was now her girlfriend. So it was quite a challenge dealing with all this. It's like you're entering into another universe where there's no holds barred, anything goes. There's none of the traditional stability, respect, dignity. For the most part, that's missing. How do you cope with all that? Where do they get the training from? Where do they get the development from? Who's going to do it? So I thought, once doing the lounge, we need situations where people can be trained and develop in bhakti. Should you immediately throw them into the brahmacharya ashram? I say no. First of all, I wanted a stable brahmacharya ashram of brahmacharis who are actually committed and who knew with full consciousness what they're getting into. I'm a firm believer in the ashram system, but can you take the average Westerner off the street who's become interested in bhakti and put him in a regular ashram? That means either he's a brahmachari or he gets married. They have no ability yet to make that choice. So I myself didn't want to just slap saffron on the men, for example. They get into the brahmacharya ashram, I've seen, when you put them in saffron immediately, and after a while they may even develop resentment, like, I had to do this. So I thought, I don't want to be, since as a sannyasi I'm helping to run the brahmacharya ashram, I don't want to be saying to the young men, do this pretty please with ice cream on top. If you're going to be in the brahmacharya ashram, you should have full commitment and awareness of what you got into. But what to do with the young men before they have that consciousness and are able to make a logical choice in terms of the development of their bhakti. So therefore I thought what I call the Contemporary Vedic Ashram. And not only for men, but also women. In New Zealand, if you do not have equal facilities for women, you can forget it. The men will protest more than the ladies because they've been trained that way. It's rated by the UN as being the #1 female power country in the world. When you come out of the airport in Auckland, the international airport, there used to be a sign. It's an advertisement, but there used to be a sign over the whole road, over the motorway saying, "Welcome to the Women's Republic of New Zealand." It was an ad. It was meant to catch your attention, but still. So I'm just explaining to you, with no value judgments, this is what I had to deal with. So, yes, we have contemporary ashrams for ladies as well as men. The purpose of these ashrams is to train the candidate to the point where the candidate can decide what my future in bhakti is going to be. And they stay in this situation minimum 1 year, many times 2 years. It's not a full-on temple ashram or brahmacharya ashram. It is semi-independent in that there's a morning program and everyone chants their rounds in the morning, and then they may go to work, they may go to the university, or they may just try to get their health and their head back together after, 8 years of the party scene. Supervision is very important, a mentor. I think some of you are getting a whiff that this is sort of like Kalakanta Prabhu's famous Krishna house. Yes, you could say it's a Krishna house that's open to not only students, but anyone who wants to take some semi-supervision. You've got some independence, but yes, you follow the 4 rules. Yes, you show that you're making progress in chanting Hare Krishna. If you're not chanting 60 rounds, you show that you show intent that you are considering that goal. And you're willing to take instruction modestly from whoever is running that contemporary ashram. I call it contemporary Vedic ashram because it's neither brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas. It's something circumstantial to deal with the conditions that we have in Kali Yuga today. My ashram philosophy is whatever ashram you want to choose, let's slow things down so that you can make a solid choice based on deliberation. You want to be a brahmachari? Let's just slow that down now Do you understand what you're getting into? Spend some time in the Contemporary Vedic Ashram so that you really know what you want to do and what the brahmacharis do. Then make your choice. You want to get married? Slow it down. Do you understand what grihastha life is all about if you want to be a spiritually progressive grihastha? Do you understand the responsibilities? Slow things down and become prepared in a non-pressured atmosphere in which you still have some independence, but you're working under the supervision of a mature devotee, just like Kalakanta Prabhu does in Gainesville. The persons there in the Krishna house are under his supervision. So similarly, in New Zealand, we have several of these houses, maybe 4 of them, half for women, half for men. And we have devotees who want to dedicate their life to bringing up devotees in this way. They run these houses. Often they're grihastha couples who don't have children. And they're like mentors. They give life counseling. Well, I think that's not the best thing for you to study in school if you really intend to make some money after you graduate. Anthropology is not the hottest field these days. These mentors have some life experience, so they can give the necessary material advice for budding Krishna bhaktas. Then, after about a year, you start to see where these persons are at. They start to see where they themselves are at. And so then we have quite a few men who make the step to the brahmachari ashram. But they do it in full consciousness. We know what a brahmachari lives like. We've seen, they even visit from time to time the brahmachari ashram. And so it really takes the steam, the pressure off the brahmachari ashram in terms of stability. It's not like a revolving door where the brahmacharis have to deal with new persons coming in and out all the time. Because we want our brahmacharis to try to stick around in that ashram for as many decades as possible. And we do have those who've been there for several decades because their lifestyle is, the brahmachari lifestyle is very stable, and it's not under siege all the time by so many miscellaneous personalities coming and going. What I see in my travels throughout North America is that once you get someone interested, then what? Whether it's Toronto, whether it's Philadelphia, here, there, is the temple ashram, where there are temple ashrams, is that it? You will get some fortunate ones who can rise to that occasion. But I'd like to tell you that there's a whole world out there of persons, millennials, who are interested in trying to live a bhakti lifestyle, but where do they do it? They may be university students. Why should they drop out of the university just to live a bhakti lifestyle? They may be working a job. Great. They may just want to get their health together. Fine. Where are the facilities where they can do that? I don't use the term halfway house because it sounds like recovering drug addicts or prisoners. But I remember in 1973 when I joined the New York Temple, first they put us in what they call the halfway house. Remember that, Maharaj? It was just an apartment with totally bare. Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 So I remember it was apartment, just near the temple. I remember I was there, Gopi Pranadana Prabhu was there, Dravida was there. And then, upon being observed, the temple president gave this one permission to move into the temple, that one to move into the temple. I think when I moved into the halfway house, I was chanting 13 rounds a day. So in the history of ISKCON, these ventures do exist, just like with the loft and the lounge. You see that in Prabhupada's endeavors. The Contemporary Vedic Ashram, in a primitive way, you see that back in the days of the famous Henry Street Brooklyn Temple, New York ISKCON. Where are the persons who can do such a thing, and where are the properties? Yes, that's always a requirement. In New Zealand, for example, I don't accept the financial burdens of persons who want to stay in the Contemporary Vedic Ashram. They have to support themselves somehow. Now, as Kalakanta Prabhu explained to me, there's an advantage in these social welfare countries in that if you can show the government that you're doing your best to get a job, the government will support you with no cutoff until you get a job or change your situation or want to go to the university or something. That's an advantage. As Kalakanta Prabhu told me, he said, look, you got to understand, you're probably dealing with the most, in a Kali Yuga context, you're dealing with probably one of the most benign governments on the earth these days, at least for now, until the money runs out. So I'm sure as ingenious American devotees, Prabhupada would always point that out, that we can come up with some methods to get around the lack of a social safety net that would even support persons in their intermediate phase. America is a much more wealthy country, for example, than New Zealand and Australia. So there's a disadvantage in that the government, you're struggling to have universal health care. Do you actually have that now? Or? Yes. So there's a struggle on one side, but on the other side, there's much greater wealth available. So if some enterprising, devotional, charitable householder says, I'll provide a property, and you just need a house. Not everyone in the Contemporary Vedic Ashram has to have their own room. They can share rooms. What's going on these days in the American job market? So many young people are living with their parents because they can't afford residences of their own. So if you can live with your parents, why can't you live with devotees in a Contemporary Vedic Ashram? Why can't you share a room? At so many universities, you have to share a room with someone. What do they do when they're living in this ashram? If they're not working, if they're not studying, and even while they're working and studying, they help out with the outreach. Because they identify as being part of the lounge culture. That's where they came from. The lounge is cultivating people, bringing them up in bhakti, teaching them how to distribute bhakti. So that lounge becomes their cultural capital, so to speak. Yes, if there's a temple in the city, they also, on Sundays, they all go to the temple on Sundays. So in this way, you can have the best of all worlds. If you have a temple in the area, the temple president is so happy to see so many Western devotees come on Sunday from all parts of the city. But the temple is not disturbed by newcomers who don't know anything and who don't understand the tradition, and then you have to explain it to them. All that pressure is off the temple president. Besides real estate, whether you rent a place or buy it, you need persons who will do that. Persons who invest their life into raising up new children. Often it's householders who don't have own children. Have to be that, though. There's such a taste in it, developing in bhakti. This way, you can open up to a wider the population than just students. Anyone, generally persons who will live between the age of 18 and 30. Accept a little guidance, accept bhakti structure, stay in this ashram and develop. Our motto is we developed basically a few main activities: book distribution, prasad distribution at the university, cultivating young men. Are you ready for this? Studying Prabhupada's books, minimum 2 hours a day. Are you ready for this? Is this what you want? So they have to convince me. Otherwise, because, here I am on the other side of the world. I don't have time to, Prabhu, please, come on. Forget it. So, no, we've never had any leakage going that way. Not in 20 years. Yes.
So when the people who are in the contemporary place, when they want to move into the brahmachari ashram, do you also provide a facility for them to interact with other senior brahmacharis around the globe to get a second or opinion rather than just getting an opinion from only one person? Can they interact with other people also?
There are senior brahmacharis there. Some of them 20 years.
Okay. Yes. But globally, from around the world, like visiting speakers or brahmacharis coming around?
They go to India every other year.
Okay.
Otherwise, New Zealand is not exactly in the middle of constant traffic,
Thank you, Maharaj.
So therefore, we send our brahmacharis to India every other year so they can hear from senior Vaishnavas besides the ones who visit there. Okay? Yes. Is there a time limit how long persons can spend in the Contemporary Vedic Ashram? Maybe 3 years. It turns out that's how it's worked out. 3 years. And then the ashram leader might say, I think you need to start making some firm decisions about how your life is going to move on. We don't rush anything there. We don't rush ashram choice. We don't rush initiations. Just take your time, think about it, know what you're getting into. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
You mentioned about staff. You were referring to them as staff. So are they getting, the people that are staff, are they getting paid to work there?
No.
Okay.
You're talking about the Bhakti Lounge. Generally, only someone who's doing cooking full-time gets paid. Everything else is voluntary, done by persons who they're going to the university, they're working during the day, part-time jobs, they committed preachers who have a part-time job, who like to live simply just for the sake of preaching. There's such a taste in this, and you see the success that you just want to do this. Lord Chaitanya is giving that kind of taste. You see, you see that Western people can come to bhakti from all parts of the world and be trained, and that gives you such a conviction. Yes. Easily done if you have a building and a person. Easily done. It just takes patience on the part of the person, like Prabhupada was patient on 2nd Avenue, waiting online for shower with the first devotees, and it takes a house. I was at the Bhakti Center in Manhattan, and Anantadev who holds forth there, was telling me, I've got this one from this university who's chanting 16 rounds. I got that one from that university. That one's working on Wall Street, and they're all young guys. And what do I do with them? I said, well, you got any rooms in the Bhakti Center? I said, this is your future staff. Bring them up in the company culture. They have to live somewhere. These guys can't afford their own apartment in Manhattan, but you've got space. So it's easily done. It's actually, I know, I can imagine many of you are thinking, well, yeah, this is not rocket science. A little bit of thinking outside the box, providing a facility. You can do it. You can, even coming from an Indian background, Mangalarti Devi, she's from the Delhi area or something like that. She's doing it in Toronto. And you really learn what makes these Westerners tick. What are their problems? What are their anxieties? You help them make a choice of their ashram. It's very exciting. You get to learn so much about life in that way. It can easily be done. And in this way, you won't have just where there are temple ashrams, which are rare these days, I've seen in North America, it won't be all or nothing. Because often there's a fear that I become a brahmachari, for example. If I can't be a brahmachari anymore, do I just drop off the face of the earth or what? But they've had experience, these brahmacharis, that for 1 or 2 years, I practiced Krishna consciousness successfully and engaged in devotional service in the Contemporary Vedic Ashram. So now I know that even if I leave the brahmachari ashram, I can still function. I've done it before. And that's an amazing source of relief and confidence. The fear of leaving the brahmachari ashram is not so great because I've already been in a situation in which I did service, I kept my Krishna consciousness together while working, while going to school. So it gives them that conviction that they can actually do that outside the brahmachari ashram. And let me add, these situations also exist for ladies. If you have senior ladies who want to sacrifice in that way, they can run such facilities for ladies.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I have 2 questions. This launch program or Krishna House program, are these all registered, or it's going to be function under ISKCON, or how does it really?
They're preaching centers. Some are actually, the big ones, the real vibrant ones, are ISKCON entities. They pay GBC taxes. I mean, that means you're a registered entity when you pay taxes. The smaller ones are, small operations.
So question B is related to question 1. The reason I'm asking is there are different types of people who will be coming to these programs. And have you heard of any legal issues where, being in Kali Yuga, there are different characters, and sometimes people get into a fight or abusing physically. So something happens like that in the center or in the lounge in our Krishna house. How do we deal such situation?
If there's
Legal things.
legal things like
Because different there could be yes. Something happens to them. Something happens to them. Physically or so, are we?
Right, they don't. That's true. There's no such suits. True. And the centers, of course, have liability insurance, even though there are no such suits. But you're living at the house generally is not in ISKCON's name. So that, nor do the GBCs, Ramai Swami and I, we don't want those houses in ISKCON name. Makes life simple. They're not a temple. They're actually the householder who's running the place. He is, that's his house. He's making his house available for boarders. So there doesn't have to be all these legal complications. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question. Like in your Bhakti Lounge, do you have dedicated devotees to speak to a newcomer, or anyone who comes, who is available in the Bhakti Lounge can speak to the person? Because there also, everyone has a different way of conveying the message. So is it appropriate if one newcomer is preached by several people, or?
Teamwork is required. The staff has learned how to work together. But one thing you should bear in mind, I don't know if your question involved this, we don't allow into these clubs, these lounges, our rank and file devotees just to come for the sake of being there. Because that changes the atmosphere. We want the guests to feel this is their club, their place. And if so many fully practicing devotees start showing up, the whole atmosphere changes. It's no longer an outreach place. It's a temple. And unfortunately, sometimes, our devotees like to, when they hear that there's a bunch of newcomers somewhere, our devotees like to come and kind of show their stuff, So, do you know who the 9th avatar was? You don't know. And somehow they're, Hare Krishnas, they like to, profile. So therefore, we tell our rank and file devotees, you have a temple. For you, there's the temple. This is for the newcomers. Yes? What's our time limit, Maharaj? Thank you.
Two things. Just in addition to what you experienced in Henry Street Temple, one of the most awesome bhakta leaders in the 55th Street Temple was Niranjana Maharaj. Mm-hmm. And he kept saying over and over again, same idea. He said, in addition to the bhakta program, we need a space that's not for people that are ready for the bhakta program, but they need, encouragement, and, so he wanted a designated room for that. It was on the same floor, but like over here is this and over there is that. Same principle.
Yeah.
And I could think of ways, rather than waiting for a householder that has the resource that can get a place and they in their own name, and I'm sure there's legal ways of addressing the legal issue where there's another entity that's other directors and other resources and this and that, and it's arm's distance.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, Ramai Swami has to oversee it or something. It can be somebody that oversees it.
Wonderful. Yeah.
There's ways.
Okay. Maharaj is the master of the ways. Ways and Means Committee. Let me make one point, that without this Contemporary Vedic Ashram, looking back over the past 20 years, we'd have gotten nowhere. Because what do you do with persons once they're sincerely interested? How are they trained and developed? And bhakti takes training and development. Especially when you're coming from a culture that's not favorable for bhakti development. You don't get it in your home life. You don't get it from your grandmother. So where are you going to get it from? And you're going to see, as Western society becomes more and more problematic, you're going to see a greater and greater need for such a facility. You're going to have persons who are interested in bhakti, but you just can't throw them right into the brahmacharya ashram. If they're men, if they're ladies, how do they become trained? How do they become developed? So this arrangement takes so much pressure off the temple president, takes so much pressure off the ashrams. People can find their footing in such situations. In the contemporary Vedic ashram, they can learn how they are going to exist in bhakti. So I can say 100%, without this, there would be nothing. So the two go hand in hand. Of course, you can have a contemporary Vedic ashram without a bhakti lounge, as long as you get your people from somewhere. But I would say you cannot have a bhakti lounge without some facility to incubate. Yes, thank you. Otherwise, for the men, it's just straight into the brahmacharya ashram. For the ladies, I don't know what the facilities for ladies these days. In Toronto, you have Mangalarti Devi. Some other, she runs a men's ashram and a ladies' ashram. That kind of desire and intensity is there. That no one else is doing this. If I don't do this, it's not going to get done. So here you have a 35-year-old lady from India who's was a project manager in the corporate world, managing 30 persons. And now she's running contemporary Vedic ashram. And as I said, it was quite bewildering for her at first. What are you doing? I don't know what to say. I don't understand. How could they do this? I was talking to this one, and he doesn't know who his mother and father is. Well, no. The first few years were like one shock after another. But out of all that come fine devotees. It just takes time and commitment, yes. Yes. All right.
I have a couple of questions. So first question is, how many such lounges are there, like in the whole?
Well, there in New Zealand, I think there's about 3. In Australia, there's maybe 1. In Toronto, there's 1. There's a hope that there'll be 1 in Philadelphia. We'll see. But also, other places do it to varying degrees. You're going to hear from Mahat Tattva Prabhu about his lounge program. A similar concept. You'll hear, I think, is Badri Narayan Maharaj going to explain it, or is Mahat Tattva Prabhu going to explain it? Mahat's going to explain it. Yeah, it's the same. Okay. He took the concept and applied it according to the capacities and facilities there in San Diego.
And could you comment on what role a location plays for deciding on the Bhakti launch, like the location? Should it be close to the universities or?
Where there's action, where location is where your clientele can easily access because of transportation. Mm-hmm. Ideally, it's this: near a university, yet open to all kinds of persons. We have here, I think they're here. Are the Katas here? They're from Australia. Please stand up. Bhagavad Kata, Krishna Kata. These are big supporters of Western outreach in Australia. They may be in Gopal Bhatta's league in a certain way. So, all right, you can sit down. They bought a building across the street from the topmost university in Australia, University of Melbourne. They bought a building right across the street. It's called the Mantra Lounge. And the place is humming. It has a cafe on the bottom, and upstairs is a lounge discussion area. So that's an example of such a situation. The Mantra Lounge is right across the street from that university, and it's directly tapped into that university. It's known as a cool place. It's known as cool meaning hip, and the word spreads amongst the student body. The Bhakti Club within the university sends people directly to the Mantra Lounge across the street. So, so it's not just a once a week Bhakti Club meeting or twice a week Bhakti Club meeting. The students can also go right across the street. There's the lounge and hang out and get good food and talk.
The authorities for that are Aniruddha has his arms linked, or he's involved, or what?
He's happy to take advantage of something he doesn't have to pay for.
But are they answerable to him, or does
That's
he-
their private enterprise.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Online. Aniruddha Prabhu is a wonderful manager,
Yes.
and he likes to manage,
Mhm.
and he gets into details.
Yes.
So, my question was, how involved is Aniruddha besides, it's great when people come over to the program and they, take part in the program. Does he get involved in the, ongoing decision making of what takes place there and timings of things and the staff there and stuff like that? Or you two make all those decisions, you talk to Aniruddha and you make your decisions.
The latter, because it's their private enterprise.
Okay.
But they're providing it for, in other words, ISKCON is
Sure.
piggybacking on someone else's resources.
Sure. But, sometimes piggybacking on resources, the long arm reaches over there and wants to control things. Talk to you about it later, Maharaj. Okay, then you've answered my question.
But yes, if the long arm doesn't pay the bills, then yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. I have two questions very much related. The first is, the Contemporary Vedic Ashram, is it limited to singles, or do you have couples coming in and also participating?
We don't have couples living together. If couples come, that means generally they're unmarried, and the woman will live with the ladies, the man will live with the men. It's just for a year or so. And then they find their footing, and sometimes they don't want to stay together. I mean, in the relationship. Really, it happens a lot. Yes.
Then the second question is, how much interaction is there between the two ashrams, the male and the female, and how is it restricted? How is that kind of controlled? How does that work?
Kalakanta Prabhu and I, we differ in that way. He has both genders, as you know, living in the glorious Krishna house, and they interact. I have my eye on brahmachari development, and so I want to give young men a solid chance. So therefore, the buildings for each gender are on opposite sides of the city. Okay. 4 minutes, yes. Any?
Marge, you were mentioning that for such a project to happen, it's easily replicated. All you need is a dedicated person and a property to go along with it.
Yes.
Have you seen success with a grahastha couple with children actually be successful at such a project?
I don't know if I haven't seen that. I haven't tried it. I don't know if I'd recommend it if the children are very young. Okay? Unless the facility is such that there can be a division between where the child lives and where the others are. All right, then. Anything else? Yes.
Maharaj, thank you very much for a nice presentation. Small question, Maharaj. In these two programs, what will be the typical rules and regulations for the people who are interested to live either in the Contemporary Vedic Village or in the Bhakti Lounge to make use of the facility? Are there any rules and regulations?
Yes. 16 rounds or on your way up to 16 rounds, 4 regular principles, and read Prabhupada's books. And do some service according to your schedule. You may go to work 40 hours a week, but still do a little service.
Okay.
All right?
So can that be adjusted according to the time, place, and circumstances so that we have more opportunity for the people to try out initially and then come up to speed?
What was the first part? Oh, yeah, that is the job of the mentor, adjusting everything according to time and circumstance.
Oh.
It's like an individual tutorial, much more flexible than a temple can be.
Thank you, Maharaj.
That's why maturity is required for the mentor.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have two
Okay.
questions. The first question is, do you have individuals who have experience with this model who make themselves available as consultants for devotees in other parts of the world who want to start such projects, and then they can email them, call them once a week?
Sure.
And this,
When you think about it, it's actually easy. You need a building, someone needs to provide a building, and someone needs to be willing to sacrifice in that way, to dedicate themselves to being like a counselor, a mentor, to bring up these persons from their first days in bhakti. Because remember, these young persons have to live somewhere. They have to eat somewhere. So if you can offer them those kind of facilities in bhakti with guidance, there's your future development. There are your people. And therefore you don't have to wait around just for that rare soul who comes along and, I want to move straight into the ashram. In this way, both ladies and men are benefited. And then when you start training the men and women from their earliest days, since most of them are going to get married, that means most of them have some training. There's benefits all around. All right, I think you're the president, so.
could I ask my second question, if that's okay? It'll be short. They're okay with it. How do the traditional methods of preaching in ISKCON, like for example, Harinam Sankirtan or book distribution, work with this model? And also, how do you ensure that, like, those who are practicing this model, they don't like look down upon the more traditional methods, nor do the more traditional methods look down upon the more contemporary methods? How do you manage that, or is that even not a problem?
Those who are doing urban outreach are generally too busy to look down on anyone. They are so overwhelmed with working at the coal face, so to speak, like in a mine, trying to deal with all the people they're meeting. They don't have time to look down on anyone. Yes, Mr. Chananda Pran.
Maharaj, I'm not sure if you already answered this question. Do you have a screener for who gets in, or how they get in?
Definitely. The one who runs the house screens. He doesn't allow anyone in unless he knows them and sees how they're coming along at the lounge. He goes to the lounge and he's looking for talent. So he knows everyone from the first time they show up. So finally, it's easily done. As Gopal Bhatta Prabhu asked, it's scalable. It produces immense dividends. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
So now we have a short break for 15 minutes, and then we will have the Canada Leadership Bhakti Lounge presentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, can I have everybody's attention for just a few minutes? I know this is a time for a break, and I know that everybody wants to go do something. I just had this idea this morning. I didn't know exactly the nature of this whole presentation that was happening over these next days, but I'm part of a project that we're trying to develop something called, Internet Pedal for the ISKCON 50, which is coming up next year. And so what we're needing to do, besides, of course, have a website, is one of the most crying needs we're going to have will be content developers. Gopal Bhatta mentioned something about how on the internet content is king. So we need people who will spend some time developing blogs or possibly taking videos of events that are happening, events that will happen, and then they can upload them to, say, YouTube, and then we can link across. Probably the way it will happen is you will go to the website itself, and there'll be a form, and you'll fill out your blog, or you'll fill out your report, like a war correspondent for what did happen at the program, and then you can also do the same thing with video. But I need this all over. I assume mostly everybody here is from North America somewhere. Maybe there's a few that aren't. But if you're willing to be one of those people, it's not going to be a huge amount of effort that you'll have to put in. But if you're willing to be one of those people, I have some cards here. Please put your name, your snail mail address, your email address, your phone number, those stats, and whether you move around a lot or you're basically in one place. Those are the things I need to know. So can I have a quick show of hands, anybody who's interested in becoming a content developer for a website that you won't have to do any of the technical aspect of it, but that's one of the main things I'm looking for, is people who are willing to blog a bit, willing to write up things that are happening, willing to write up things that will happen, not only things that did happen, but things that will happen in the future, and possibly also take videos of them with your cell phone. Anybody interested? Okay, let me pass out some cards. If I could get somebody up here. And so get a pen. Again, I need your name, your address, your email address, your telephone number, and whether you stay in one location or you travel around. I assume most of you probably stay in one place. Some of the younger ones of you may be traveling around. On the same note, while everybody's filling these out, if there's anybody who would be interested in being a proofer, someone who might proofread things that come in from various others, if you have those skills or interested, I'd also be interested in you filling out something and put the fact that you might be a proofer. Sorry to take your time. I'm happy that this is going on the way it is. I just thought this was a golden opportunity to, ask for this information, because this will be coming up very soon. Probably our website will make it or flounder depending on how much input we have from other people as far as developing the content that goes into it. It's not a one-person thing. Somebody's not going to sit alone in an office somewhere and develop content.